Okay, so we all know who this next speaker is. How many packages do you think he has on CRAN? Because this fun fact is about the number of packages. I have the answer. All right, it's 20, 7. You have to be the closest without going over. 12, 8, 1. 1. Who said 15? All right. 17. All right. 11 packages on CRAN. So who said 10? Someone said 10 over here? No, you said 12. One might have won. You said 7? 7's close. All right, so everyone please welcome with 11 packages on CRAN, Tyler.
Okay, great. My name is Tyler Morgan-Wall, and I am the author and developer of the rayshader package, as well as the rayverse, a collection for packages for 3D data visualization and mapping. And I'm a researcher at the Institute for Defense Analyses down in Alexandria, Virginia. And today I'll be talking about Quarto AI and the art of getting your life back. So last year I had done something really cool, and I wanted to share it with the world. I created an R package that allowed you to transform 2D geospatial data into 3D buildings, generating entire cities in a matter of minutes. But finishing the code was just the beginning. Without explaining the value of what I had done in terms of solving actual problems, the chance that someone would both come across my work and come to the conclusion on their own that it was worth their time was next to none. So now what? So I decided to write a blog post about it. So even if I wrote great documentation in the package itself, documentation focuses on the how to use the package and not the why to use the package. With a blog post, you can tell your project's origin story, what problem or idea brought it into being, and the trials and tribulations you encountered on your journey to solve those problems. And running your own blog means that you control the medium. You can customize your site however you want, use high-quality images and videos, make it as long as you want, and there is absolutely no chance that your blog will be purchased by Elon Musk. I've run my own blog since 2016, and having a place to feature my own long-form content has been a great boon for my professional life. But when I was first starting my blog and trying out different frameworks, it immediately became obvious that actually running a blog is awful. Having to deal with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript on top of the already hard technical work I was doing with R, no thank you. So after extensive research, I landed on running my blog on WordPress. Now, if you don't know, WordPress powers over 40% of all websites on the internet. And it's so popular because it's super easy to theme, customize, and publish content without having any technical background. So it seemed like the obvious choice for someone who wanted to spend as little time on the actual act of running a blog as possible. But appearances can be deceiving. The downside to WordPress's ubiquity is it's constantly being probed by hackers, so security updates are essential and unrelentingly frequent. And at the time I went to publish this post on 3D Cities, I discovered I wouldn't be able to install these updates without updating my Linux distribution, which I couldn't do because my server didn't have enough space. And trying to figure this out was taking a lot of time and energy. And I wanted to be spending my time doing the stuff I actually enjoy doing, not server maintenance. But I was dreading the idea of switching from WordPress, as I didn't want any complex technical steps to publish a blog post. I wanted to write, hit a publish button, and get on with my life. Additionally, I didn't want to lose all the custom styling and dynamic features I had in my WordPress site. Basically, I wanted it all the user-friendliness of WordPress without all of the hassle. So, enter Quarto. Quarto builds static sites, so there's no constant parade of security updates. But customizing your website is harder since you have to style your website manually. While in the past that meant being forced to learn languages like JavaScript and CSS, the development of large language models, which henceforth I'll refer to as AI, has greatly lowered this barrier to entry. So given that introduction, what should you expect to take away from this talk? Well, first, I'm going to tell you the one weird trick I learned to easily convert any existing blog to Quarto. Second, I'm going to show you how you can completely automate your blog's deployment process using something called Quarto render hooks. And then finally, I'm going to show you how you can use AI to customize and add dynamic features to your Quarto website. So to begin, let's say you have an existing website, Quarto or WordPress or something else, and after this talk, you decide to transition to Quarto. So how would you go about doing that? Doing the absolute bare minimum amount of work. For context, I originally wrote all of my blog posts in R Markdown, knitted them to HTML, and just copied and pasted the raw HTML into my WordPress editor. So technically, I could have gone back to the original RMD files and then manually converted them to QMD files, but that would be a lot of work. So instead, let me describe you the trick that made this process effortless. So to illustrate this trick, let's look at an example of one of my blog posts. Note that the actual content isn't important, just that each post is raw HTML pasted into the WordPress editor. Now to the right, here's the exact same post as a QMD file for my new Quarto website, which, if you look closely, is the exact same content. And that is just the trick. You can just copy and paste your old blog post's HTML directly into a QMD file. When you render a Quarto website, HTML in each post will be rendered as HTML, not text. You can also place HTML in a raw HTML block if you want to make sure this will happen, but you don't have to. The only work I had to do was to write a Quarto header for each post. So these headers allow you to specify post metadata, such as the title, authors, date, but it also allows you to add shared scripts across posts. But this allowed me to recreate something I had in my WordPress website, which is I had custom style sheets and JavaScript injected into each post via a global customization option in WordPress. And I was able to keep those and add those to my new site via each post's include in header, include after body, and CSS fields. In the header, you can also specify a featured image for each post. So note that the image is still pointing to a WordPress-specific media directory, WP content. To ensure all my old image links didn't break and complete the transition to Quarto, I simply copied this directory and all of its subdirectories to my new site. And that is all I had to do to convert my site to Quarto. So let's see and compare the old and the new. So here's the old site, and here's the new. So different style, but note that all of the content is rendered perfectly, and it only required writing a few Quarto headers. And note that because the conversion process just used each post HTML, this trick could easily apply to other blogging frameworks as well. The only caveat is if you had dynamic content, such as WordPress shortcodes, or let's say hard-coded design elements, those will require a little bit more care. But now, having converted my website to Quarto, I still had the problem of actually getting it online. I wanted to remove as many of these cognitive barriers to publishing a post as possible, and for me, that meant never having to leave my Quarto project in RStudio. I wanted the equivalent of WordPress's Publish Post button in my RStudio project. So how could I do that? With Quarto render hooks. So Quarto render hooks are a neat and powerful feature that allow you to inject your own scripts into the Quarto rendering process. Just as a note, this was all rendered in R. This is made using the rayrender package, so that 3D rendering is in R. You can specify these Quarto render hooks in your project level Quarto file like this. So these can be arbitrary shell commands, Python, Lua, and R scripts. So here I've specified a pre-render hook that just prints a fun message and several post-render hooks that do some actual work. For example, since I store my media in a two non-standard directories located within my posts directory, Quarto doesn't automatically move them to my final site directory when I render the website. So these first two hooks just simply copy these directories over after rendering is complete. After that, I then call an R script called transfer site that does exactly what it sounds like. But note this extra argument at the end. So what exactly does this do? It has this tie-in to what we're trying to do here. So let's look at the script and see. Well, this string in my project file is effectively the toggle button to upload my site. So in R, you can check for extra arguments passed when R was started by using this function called command args. So when I'm editing my site and I don't want to upload it, I simply go to my Quarto project file, change the string to anything else, and the script then skips the uploading process and just renders locally on my laptop. I also then remind future me how to turn uploading on in case I forget, because that is just basic programming self-care. So here is the meat of the automation. The upload process simply consists of specifying my source and destination directories, and then calling the rsync utility via a system call, which then uploads the complete site. And that's it. Since I set this up, this render hook has allowed me to publish multiple blog posts without ever touching a terminal, and edit my site as well. And even though I had never actually used rsync before, I am not a Linux master, whatever, terminal genius, I learned how to use it very quickly by using AI. AI can be a great learning tool, especially when you're teaching yourself well-established utilities like rsync, as well as popular languages like JavaScript and CSS. And that brings me to the last part of my talk: customizing your website with AI. While transitioning from a server-generated framework like WordPress to a static framework like Quarto brings many performance and maintenance improvements, it also does limit some of the cool dynamic features of your website. And by moving from a massively popular tool like WordPress to a relatively new tool like Quarto, you lose a lot of the nice community learning resources and tools that are built to help you customize your website. However, the emergence of AI has vastly evened this playing field. The current batch of AI tools were in large part trained on web-based data, and we are trying to make a website. So while they might not be good at more specialty languages like R or things like critical thinking or basic mathematics, they are pretty good at answering basic questions like, please generate CSS that makes my submit form button spin around when I click it. So let's do that, not the spinning button bit, but let's try to create some fun 3D animated cards in Quarto. So to the right up there are the original sort of 3D cards I had for each post on my WordPress website. So I wanted to create something like that effect in Quarto. So let's look at what we're starting with on our Quarto site. So these are the default postcards in Quarto, completely plain design, static with white background, perfectly fine. But I wanted to write some CSS to add some nice animations and subtle changes when a reader moused over each card. To do this, I simply iterated back and forth with ChatGPT, adding the generated CSS to my Quarto style.css file, and then provided feedback with each iteration, which honed in on the effect I wanted with small adjustments to the existing CSS. Note that nowhere in my prompts was I using technical language specific to CSS to request what I wanted, because I don't know CSS, so I don't know that information to request that. I don't know what to exactly request when I want these effects. I was using plain descriptive language like tilting a piece of brushed metal rather than asking for specific CSS classes and features. And the nice thing about AI is that, at least with really popular tools like CSS, it's really good at finding exactly what features you need from your plain language request. Even if it doesn't get the implementation exactly right, it will usually get you 90% there just by pointing out the relevant features in its response. And the risk of AI giving you the wrong answer, which is always present, can be mitigated if you have the ability to quickly check for correctness, which I could do here simply by rendering the page. So after a 10-minute back and forth with ChatGPT, this was the final result. A nice little 3D effect on my Quarto main page made entirely with AI. This, however, was a particularly easy example for AI, since what I was requesting was a pretty common and relatively straightforward decorative effect. How could AI handle something more complex with user interactivity and maybe some design constraints? So that brings me to the second feature I wanted AI to assist me on, an image carousel. So my old website, which we can see here, featured an image carousel that automatically circled or faded through the most recent posts, displaying the post title as well as the featured image. So it also allowed users to jump ahead to later posts in the carousel with a selector at the bottom. In WordPress, this carousel was generated dynamically each time a reader loaded the page by the server querying what the most recent post was, and then creating this image carousel. So how could I recreate this in Quarto? To do so, I would need two things. One, some way to query the most recent posts when I render the website. And then second, some JavaScript to transform those posts into an image carousel. Thankfully, I already knew enough about Quarto to know what to use for the first element, which is something called document listings. So listings allow you to generate a feed of categorized and recent posts when you render a website. By default, a Quarto main page has a main listing of all posts, but we can add as many additional listings as we want. So here we add a second identical grid of posts above the first, consisting of just the 7 most recent posts. So how can we transform these into an image carousel? Well, the first, we need to adjust the cards to the right size, which I can do entirely in the header. So I adjust the listing grid so it spans the full width of the main content pane, and then increase the image height to a desired carousel height. Now, all we need to do is write some JavaScript to transform these posts into a working image carousel. So that was an animated mock-up of what I was attempting to do. This entire prompting process was a bit more involved, so I'm not going to walk through the full series of prompts. But here are 4 useful prompting strategies I encountered when implementing this feature. So first, I found it's very useful when you're customizing your Quarto site to copy the source HTML directly into your prompt so that the AI has access to structure and classes in your page. Here, I pasted all of the HTML from the listing directly into ChatGPT, and then just asked it to write some JavaScript to transform it into an image carousel. Similarly, as you iterate, it's also good to remind the AI what your current script looks like, even if it just recently generated for you like 1 or 2 prompts ago. AIs, due to their limited context window, tend to lose focus and sort of forget what they're doing. And if you really want to improve the probability that it provides a relevant response, it's really good to just constantly remind you, here is what we're working with, here is what we're working with. Similarly, if you have visual details you want changed, it can also be helpful to include a screenshot of your problem with your prompt. Here, the script was successfully transforming the image into and the post title into a semi-transparent gray overlay over the image, but it had a tiny gap at the bottom. Providing the screenshot of the issue along with a description immediately allowed the AI to propose a successful fix. And then finally, sometimes the AI can seemingly get stuck on being unable to solve the problem purely by prompting. For example, I managed to get the AI to generate an almost complete implementation of the carousel, but it still had 1 or 2 issues that it could not seem to resolve on its own. At that point, I just started reading through the script and asking the AI to explain the purpose of specific snippets of code. And then once I understood what the code was doing, I just sat down and fixed both problems myself. I mean, JavaScript is not that hard. It's just annoying to learn. So AI's performance when directly writing code can be middling at best. I mean, they're definitely working on improving it. But I found it to be very accurate and very good at explaining the purpose of small snippets of code. Combining the breadth of AI's knowledge with your far superior problem-solving skills can really supercharge your development speed. And while I didn't escape entirely unscathed from boring and tedious front-end work, AI did allow me to keep it to the absolute bare minimum. And the final result was pretty much exactly what I had in mind. In fact, I liked it even a little bit more than the original WordPress version because this one actually circled through the posts like the name and image carousel might imply, rather than just fading between them. So I thought this was a good success. So all in all, my new website was faster, better, and easier to maintain. The moral of the story is yes, you can indeed have it all. So what to take away from this talk other than that you really want to use rayrender to make beautiful 3D visualizations, because obviously. First, Quarto can render pre-existing HTML in a QMD file. Just a very simple but very powerful fact. Second, Quarto render hooks can be used to automate many of the tedious parts of website deployment away, and you can write these scripts entirely in R and set triggers directly in your Quarto project, so you never have to leave your RStudio or whatever positron VS Code environment. And then finally, while AI can write code for you, it can often be equally, if not more useful as a learning resource when working with unfamiliar tools. So using AI can help you save time and focus on doing the things that you actually enjoy. Thank you so much.